So it's like as soon as you think you're going to get to the city, like then it just resets, and you're just like, damn it.
I was about to say
It's like the thing that bounces around in corners, and
yeah, you're just like,
just
oh,
never
we're so
stops.
close. We're so close there. I know. How's everybody doing? You want to talk about Russell's Reserve 13? What the fuck happened there?
Sure.
I had nothing to do with that.
Well, I heard some guy on the internet said it was the best, and
yeah. Well, we'll start here in a second. Before it was funny. I just wanted to kind of talk about it because I don't know. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, I keep seeing all these posts. It's gone up to like what, $800 now a bottle, like something ridiculous like that.
Way to go, Fred.
There's only one person to blame here.
That and Seagrass and Henry McKinney.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, do me a favor. I don't think your microphone's correct.
Okay.
Double check it real quick.
That sure does not sound like a sure.
It does not.
although Seagrass apparently is way more controversial than I thought. I really like Seagrass. Thought that was a good pick, and apparently some are like, it's terrible. I hate it. Like, I don't know.
Seagrass is great.
I really like that one. I think it's
Yeah,
it's just
I mean,
it's a polarizing
you gotta
one.
like rye, I mean, I think it's that simple. There's so many
Yeah.
people who don't they're bourbon fans and they don't like rye. They like the Kentucky ryes, but those are so bourbon-esque anyway.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Mhm.
Okay. And then now it's making me thinking, Blake, I don't think you're going to the right microphone either.
Mine's still saying, because I checked it.
Because it sounds very
Hold on, let me
echoey.
try this.
How about now? Is that better?
There we go.
Oh, there it is.
There we go. All right.
Alexa did. Right. It was going through my video. I can't read.
Next, we're gonna get you a new webcam because you're all grainy tonight now.
Am I?
You are.
Hold on.
That's what everybody's saying.
Hold on. That should be.
Is everybody taking up all your Wi-Fi over
No,
there?
that's even worse.
It's little known fact: when your hot water goes out, your Wi-Fi goes
Oh,
out.
so does the Wi-Fi. Actually, hold on. Y'all get
Blake's
started.
been
I
taking
forgot
cold
I'm not
showers for
plugged.
the last 4 years.
I'm not hardwired in.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, that's what's gonna get hardwired before we start this thing, because that's all we need is him dropping out 20 minutes in because his battery's dead. That was even funny. What was it? I think John called it out earlier. He said, make sure. Oh, yeah, it is.
That's why people tune in, right? The technology adventures of Blake.
They know how this goes every single time. I'm just glad people stick around with it because, I always make sure I care about the listener experience, and every once in a while we'd have to deal with Blake's audio.
I think there's a whole side gambling thing going on Bourboner when this takes place. Like, what's going to happen to Blake tonight?
It's always something.
I like how he still uses Bourboner, even though I think he's abandoned all the use of it. It's just Blake and Sealbox from now on.
This is just like our trip. Where's Blake?
He's on the phone again.
Truth.
Putting out another fire. And he's talking, and he's still on mute. It's okay. We'll get him.
That's your brother, Kenny.
I still have my headphones on and heard all those very mean things you said about me and Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
My instances.
You're not going to the microphone again, though.
Son of a. See, here's the
I can tell.
problem is
Don't blame it on the technology.
It's definitely the technology. It can't be me.
There we go. Now it sounds
It'll
good.
always say like, "Oh, your microphone unplugged. You're muted," and then when I unmute it, just defaults back to the camera button.
Blake, you have 4 kids. Just grab one of them beforehand and be like, "Can you help Dad set this up? Because they got it for you. Don't worry."
I'm not letting them stay up till 9 o'clock. Are you crazy? Maybe at least an hour and a half before.
Nice. All right. Cool.
Let's get this party started.
We'll get it going here. We'll get a second of silence and we'll kick it off. Welcome, everybody. We are back with the 65th Bourbon Community Roundtable. The whole crew is here except for our lawyer. So don't ask any legal questions because then it's just bad advice after this. But at least on the Bourbon Pursuit crew, we got our team here. So myself, Kenny, and as well as Ryan and Fred. Fellas, how's it going?
Hey,
What up?
You excited? Ready to dive into
Yeah.
some new topics? Some stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is like, it kind of coincides with the last roundtable with the prediction of a big acquisition coming up, and we start the year with the big one.
Isn't it funny? I think every year for a prediction, we're always like, who's going to get swooped up this year? It always happens, and we never get it correct.
That's right.
Not even close.
But, it's the mindset of people, when they sell, why they want to sell, what's the right number. This one's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into it. But before we do that, let's go ahead and give the other guys a chance to introduce themselves. So we'll go to the man who always has some good microphone and webcam issues before we start. So Blake, how's it going, buddy?
Doing well. Yeah, happy to be here. Got some really good topics, so I'm excited. This is not one I saw coming, although I guess from a total brand perspective, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
We'll get
do I
into it.
introduce myself? Or we doing? Yeah, we're not. Okay, Blake.
As John said earlier, we've only
had
had 65 roundtables to practice this so far, so we're getting
I don't
better.
know. There was like one episode where you said, "Okay, we're not doing intros at the beginning," and
just a little.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
And of course, we got Jordan from Breaking. What's up, man?
How's it going, guys? This is Jordan, one of the three fellas from breakingbourbon.com. All your review needs when you're standing in the liquor store figuring out what to buy.
Yes. So let's go ahead and we will dive into it. So the first one is Heaven Hill acquires Sampson and Surrey. Now, part of this deal was, and I think this is the thing that we don't. This is actually the unfortunate thing is Heaven Hill being a private company. We have no idea how much they were acquired for, but they did acquire a few different premium brands as a part of this category. And really the ones I think that we, of course, care about, of course, are going to be Few Spirits and Widow Jane, because that's going to be, of course, in the bourbon and whiskey portfolio. So this is interesting to kind of see. Well, first off, we see that the acquisition train is alive and well. And can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Oh, my computer froze up a little bit. I'm sorry about that.
I mean, your face is frozen.
Yeah,
but
that's a
we can
great
hear you.
face of Frozen too.
It's
Ooh.
incredible.
Yikes.
Yikes. Oh, that's weird. Can you
It's
all
even better now.
How's your hot water?
All right. There we go. I think you can. Am I good now? Yeah, it's weird. That tab really kind of burned up some CPU
Just blame Blake.
All right, I'll kind of start that over then real quick. So it's really good to see that the acquisition cycle is still happening. That means people have money, so people are spending it. That's good. Now I kind of want to roll this back and let's start talking about, like, before we talk about the brands or anything like that. I kind of want to put it out there. Like, is this a good acquisition? Like, this was something that I think Ryan and we talked about on a This Week in Bourbon. We try to make sure that people understand that bourbon and whiskey is just a very small portion of the Heaven Hill brands portfolio. So you always got to keep that in perspective. But when you start looking at what they did acquire, I kind of want to get your all's take on this one, because for me, it was kind of out of left field. It may have been one that the price was right and they had some brand recognition. They had some footprint everywhere. But the other thing that was kind of different is that they said, they're still going to operate pretty much independently, but under the Heaven Hill brands umbrella. But I kind of want to get your all's takes on this, and whoever wants to jump in can.
Yeah, I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this one.
Ryan's like,
Here, I'll go first then. Let me.
How fast I hit this buzzer?
I wasn't even going to try. I knew Fred was going to take that.
I was all over this one. This is all about the agave spirits in the deal. So Heaven Hill has slowly been building a portfolio of tequila. They got Luna Azul, which is a pretty decent tequila that's out there in retail. It's not my favorite, but it'll get the job done in a margarita. They got Two Fingers tequila. They also in the budget circles, they have a Heaven Hill tequila. But what they didn't have is they didn't have like a bartender's favorite. And Tequila Ocho was the number 2 best-selling tequila, according to Drinks International. in the past couple of years, only behind Don Julio. And this is their very first mezcal to get. So they got Mezcal Vega, and that's the first Vego. That's the first mezcal they've gotten in their portfolio. And mezcal is expected to grow 50% by volume by 2025. It continues to have 15 to 25% sales increases year after year. And if you are a large spirits company and you don't have a mezcal in your portfolio right now, you're looking around to see where you can buy one. And like they're taking a firm stance in the agave sector. I think the whiskeys are just kind of like thrown in there. Widow Jane is a very strong brand. So I mean that will fit nicely, but make no doubts about it. This was about the agave spirits.
I like that take only because what Discus released their report this past week, or maybe it was even further, it was something else that came out that said basically tequila and mezcal has grown 30% since the previous year. That's way more than whiskey and any other spirit combined. And so it is interesting to see exactly how big this category is growing. And maybe we'll talk about that, what that means here in a little bit for us bourbon geeks to say, hey, maybe people start going to tequila and start leaving our stags alone.
I mean, Fred's spot on. Tequila is now overtaking vodka as the most bought consumer brand. So that was part of that study that was released too, right? So tequila is hot. I think it's one of those things where we get really sucked in the bourbon world. Everyone sees vodka, but man, boy, people are on a tequila tear, and it seems like COVID just accelerated that. Mezcal is a huge part of that, and yeah, Fred's spot on. This is exactly what this acquisition was for.
I'll differ a little bit. I think the tequila is a big part of it, but I think it just fit the platform as a whole, because what are some of the other things that they have? Isn't there the Bryn whiskey, the Blue Coat gin? I think it was just a packaged up portfolio, and maybe that should be leading some of our discussions of, we all like to guess that, it's going to be barrel, it's going to be smoke wagon that gets acquired. And really what maybe some of these big conglomerates are looking for is a full portfolio acquisition that they know that they can just turnkey, ship it out to all their distributors, all their different accounts, and it scales really quick overnight, because I've mentioned this before, but if you do the Heaven Hill bottling tour, like you may see 3 cases of bourbon on your way walking through this, 1,000,000 square foot warehouse, but in total, it's all these clear spirits, cordials, flavored whiskeys or rums, flavored vodkas. So I think that's kind of the route that they saw with this is really all 5 of those brands in that portfolio are strong. And so it's probably a good acquisition. Obviously, I'm curious as to how much it was for, but that could be the blueprint moving forward. It's not just about building one, it's about building multiple at the same time.
Yeah, you saw them do this with when vodka and flavored vodkas were hot. They had Burnett's, which was kind of like a lower tier shelf item, and then they purchased Deep Eddy, to kind of get the premiumization in that category. And so they're kind of doing the same thing with the tequila side. Yeah, it's still just interesting because I'm still just trying to wrap my head around this one. It's like, I guess they just want the biggest label room of any company out there. It's like, that's all I can.
They have a lot.
It's like, they've already got all these categories pretty, they already have like pretty good brands in those. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But, I mean, obviously maybe you never know what the situation the Surrey guys were in. They, it's hard to scale and grow companies, and maybe they need cash, and they were just like, hey, here's a great price we'll take to walk away from this. And, we've got some great brands here that you all can probably just elevate, on your own. And so, maybe it's a win-win from that side. But yeah, definitely kind of shocked. Did not see this one coming at all.
So the one thing that I want to touch on with Blake's is talking about this sort of package deal and portfolio things. The one thing that is a little bit different here, and I get the idea of wanting to do a package thing, but I also get the idea that if you are Heaven Hill, or if you're the likes of Constellation or somebody else, like you want to buy somebody cheap. And usually when you're doing an acquisition is you want to get it early before they get too big. For some of these brands, I mean, Freddie, you're talking about the Ocho, you talk about their Mezcal, and of course, Widow Jane is maybe, it's pretty well known amongst us and the whiskey realm and the bourbon realm. But usually you want to kind of swoop in and get some of these brands before they're well known, because you get sort of a less multiplier on those acquisitions and stuff like that. So I did think it was a little interesting to say, like, where do you go and how do you find something for there? But to kind of go back to what Blake was saying as well, is like when you say, oh, like, why isn't it a barrel or why isn't it a smoke wagon? I mean, I think the one thing that you understand is that barrel, smoke wagon, a lot of these NDPs and these independent bottlers, like the valuations of where they're at right now is extremely high, because they all have upwards of 10,000 barrels in inventory. They're doing, I couldn't tell you how many, case sales they're doing per year. And so if you want to acquire them, you're not going to do it at the market value, but you're going to do it at a multiplier. And for a lot of acquisitions, that might not make sense right away. And so it's really hard to try to figure out exactly how do you pick something that's not an emerging brand, but something that's already established, because these brands seemed a little bit already established. And if you're trying to buy something up, you kind of want to get it cheap, and you kind of want to find those things that are still trying to make their way up to market.
Well, I think that goes, so that does go back to Fred's point though a little bit. They wanted something or one or two things bad in this portfolio, right? And they knew it as they were selling it, and they said, "All right, you want, we'll take tequila, right?" Because they certainly weren't doing this for a few whiskey. You want our tequila brand, you want our mezcal brand, sure, but then you have to take these others off our hands too, because we don't want to be running this business that just has the non-leaders left. Right. And that's exactly probably what happened. You see the lot in M&A deals too. So it was a package deal for a reason. They want an out.
Yeah, I mean, you say these are well-known brands. I've never heard of Ocho Tequila. So, I mean, that's, and I'm in the spirits game. And so it's,
no, you're in the whiskey game. Don't
well,
get yourself
whiskey
wrong.
game. Whatever. It is Pursuit Spirits. We have rum and age.
We have 10 barrels. It doesn't
We have
even
10
count.
I know. I'm kidding.
Oh, what's your rum?
We'll get to that another day.
Yeah,
Venezuela.
It's sitting in barrels right now from our first United run, and we don't know what the hell we're going to do with it yet.
Okay.
But
anyway,
I
Ron,
don't
you
know.
wanna
I was
finish
going
your
there.
thought?
No, I was just saying, even though it's an established brand, it's one that I haven't heard of. And so, there's still an opportunity to grow it and, make it one of the mainstays, staple like a Deep Eddy was, is now, in the vodka game and whatnot. Heaven Hill can just put gasoline on that fire to, to keep it going.
Yeah, I think you have to realize, tequila has as much of a community as bourbon, if not more. It crosses over in a few more cultures, and it is it's one that instead of like focusing on the barrel like we do in bourbon, it really focuses on the agave and techniques, and there's there's a few brands that are just kind of like apex. Everybody wants, like Fortalezas, surely everyone's here has heard of that one. But tequila is the bartenders really lead this movement, and it's been a rough couple of years for bartenders, obviously with the pandemic, and all signs are pointing toward they're going to be back behind the bar very soon. And I think this is probably just one big overarching on-premise strategy from Heaven Hill, and trying to find a way to get more shelf space, more connection with bartenders. And I mean, it's great. I really, I don't sleep on Widow Jane. Brand whiskey, like it's a French whiskey that Alison Patel started. She's an amazing human being, and she's been carrying the French whiskey category in the United States for 10 years. That is a category that I just don't ever see really taking off, because it's French whiskey, and no one wants French whiskey. They want cognac, Armagnac, and Calvados from France. But they, if somebody does go to the bar and says, you know what, I want to try a French whiskey, it's going to be Bren. I mean, right now, Heaven Hill owns the category of French whiskey for the most part. So it's a fascinating acquisition.
Yep, and I'm glad you mentioned Widow Jane. I think, this is great I think it's a win-win for that brand for both sides. I think
For sure.
you get Lisa Wicker's talent, that they can, use that in their, gosh, I'd love if she helped with the Parkers, getting that going. back
Just
again. And,
imagine-
like,
just
you know, just
imagine
having
if,
her being, you know, involved in that. I think that would be great. And
Imagine
so,
that talent inside the Heaven Hill building. You know, I mean, that
Right.
could have been a part of it. You know, when Pernod Ricard acquired Wild Turkey, it was in their actual deal point memo that Jimmy Russell came with the deal. You know, so it's it could very well be a way to get Lisa into the fold on the whiskey side. And if Heaven Hill doesn't use her talents, then it'll be a huge disappointment from us all.
Shame on them if they don't, for sure.
Absolutely.
Ryan did have a pretty good theory about Widow Jane's access. You want to kind of share that one? I don't want to steal your thunder with it.
well, Kenny had sent me the link, and the first thing that went in my head, I was like, sweet, now Lisa gets to blend aged Heaven Hill stock, you know, instead of MGP or Dickel. So yeah, I think that's I'm excited about that. Hopefully that happens.
Yeah, they got some more stuff at their disposal, but I think it's interesting to kind of see. Like I said, I'm glad to see that acquisitions are still on. We haven't heard. I mean, really, there's only been one major one per year, and I guess that happened in the second month of the year already. So it's kind of good to see that, and we'll kind of see what the rest of the.
I got a question, and
I was gonna
nobody
say a
here
sign
may,
of things to come.
Yeah,
and I got a question. Nobody here may know, but because they're both private, who's bigger, Heaven Hill or Sazerac?
Good question.
From a total company perspective,
Yeah,
or
like just brands perspective, like total.
I would
I'm gonna-
say Heaven Hill, but I
Yeah.
don't know for sure.
I would put my money on that bet too.
I'm going with Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
But you know, the big wild card there is Fireball. I mean, Fireball's so big that it may put him over, you know, the top. I mean, it's close. It's close. But you know, Heaven Hill's got Deep Eddy. Deep Eddy's huge. You know, they have a Hypnotic, which is in all the
Oh yeah,
it's a lot of places. And yeah. I'm gonna go with Heaven Hill on that.
There we go. Don't take this as legal advice either. So this is just a bet. we'll see if anyone chimes in from either company and be like, "Oh, nope, it was us. It was us all along."
Let's open those books up. Hey, listen, if Bill Goldring and Mark Shapiro want to call me and show me their books for, I'll be happy to sign an NDA and just tell the fellas here so we can know. So if you're listening, happy to help out here.
I don't want to look at your books. Just tell me at the end of the day. It's too complicated. We've been looking at taxes. It's already starting to get into tax season. I'm just like, God, it's crushing my brain already.
You know, let's not give. You're going to give Blake heart palpitations.
Mhm.
Are you kidding me? He's probably getting excited over there.
Yeah, I'm like, y'all want to talk accounting? Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Here we go. So the next one I want to talk about is something that's going to be interesting, and I think it might only be interesting to maybe us and really big whiskey geeks out there. And I kind of had this idea, and I've been kind of floating it for a little bit, and I'm glad to kind of talk about it. And that's really, it spawned it because Wes Henderson, he was the one that founded Angel's Envy with his father, and now his sons are in the business. He has announced his retirement from Angel's Envy. Now we take it this and we like, okay, cool. Well, Wes is he's a face of the brand, but he might not be as well known to the general populace or anything like that. You take a look at something like Beam. Fred No has already said that he wants to retire very soon, and Freddie is very much already grooming to start moving in those footsteps. I mean, we can already see that sort of stuff happening, and so that family legacy, I feel, will continue to live on there. The wild card, when I look at this, is definitely going to be Wild Turkey, because we know that Jimmy is getting up there in age, and I feel that maybe Eddie is kind of sticking around and just for the purposes of being family and everything like that. But as soon as the time passes, I don't feel that Eddie's going to be a lifer at Wild Turkey. I think he's going to be content and kind of want to move on. And when I think about something like that, I think about the brand of Russell's and what that could do. But this isn't just about that per se. We can use those as examples, but I kind of want to talk about what happens when the face of a brand ends up leaving. What could happen, or how do companies sit there and work around it? On the Angel's Envy side, I don't think they're going to have much of a problem, only because Angel's Envy is such a large brand, such a well-known brand, that they haven't really had a huge face of it. That people, if you go and ask somebody what their favorite bourbon is and they say Angel's Envy, and you go, well, technically that's not bourbon, they're like, they're not going to know who Wes Henderson is anyway, right? But for us, we all know that. But when we take something like the Russells, I think it's in a little bit different situation. So I kind of want to put it out to you all, sort of, what do you feel what happens when a face of that brand leaves? Is that damage control? Is it getting rid of the label? Kind of talk about what you all think.
So I got a question for you, Kenny. Is this just research in case Ryan pieces out? Is that what we're worried
Yes,
about
it
here?
is. It is.
This is field testing for when Ryan decides he's out.
I got offers right now.
Yeah, he's got offers. I'm trying to buy him out and push him out. You know, we're coming at him all angles here. We're just trying to see what happens here.
So I'll jump in a little bit. So, as the average consumer, I think Kenny kind of hit on it. You'd say it's not important, but I really do think it's important. So just going back to like the Bourboner days of doing blog posts and everything, if somebody said, hey, Fred knows in town, do you want to go to a tasting with him? I'm like, oh, absolutely. But if it's like, hey, our area sales reps in town, do you want to go to a tasting? It's like, yeah, I think I'm busy, like got things to do. So I think from just drawing attention from media and writers and distributors and retailers, because that's those guys' main, well, I won't say main thing, but that's a big part of what they do is just, on-site visits, shaking hands with retailers, talking to distributors, doing dinner. So I think it's a really important part of it to have that kind of legacy. I mean, the Russell name is so big, even the Henderson name, but I think it's something Kyle could easily pop into because he has that name. But when somebody like that steps down, like there's definitely a void to fill.
I think there is, but let's look at Four Roses as an example. I mean, they've carried on just fine. And I think the average consumer just, one, they don't know and they don't care, right? Again, I think the whiskey world was on fire. What's going to happen? Well, nothing really happened. It ended up being okay for them. So
Brent's great too, though. So I think they had a
great individual. They had a good fallback
so,
plan, but again, that was, it was just a path forward that shows brands will be okay when that takes place. It's not, they didn't hedge their bets just to have everything crumble after 80 years.
So, all right, Kenny, let Ryan go. Kenny, we decided.
No.
Ryan, you up? Go ahead.
No,
Ryan.
go ahead, Fred.
I stole his recipe, so we don't need him anymore.
So first of all, let's just approach Wild Turkey for a second. The Russells are going to be there for as long as all of us live. I mean, there's always going to be a Russell there, and a Russell will always be the face of that brand. I have no doubts about that. You have two in the wings waiting right now, Bruce and Joanne. And are they Eddie and Jimmy? Well, hell, nobody is. But I also want to say that there are some bourbon figures that when they leave, they're still there. Booker No is an example. But, Booker No, in my notes leading up to this, I was put together some like historic names that continue to shadow over the distillery. And Booker is, in the contemporary sense, still very much everywhere, every day at Jim Beam. His son, Fred, of course, took over and became the face, but it's still Booker No. Booker No has a statue there. And so I think that in bourbon, the right people live on at the facility, at the distillery. When Pappy Van Winkle died in the early 1960s, his family went behind the back of his son to sell the shares of the family distillery, and they sold in 1972. And so I think, with the case of Angel's Envy, they have already sold, so that would have been my very first thought is like, what's going to happen there? My second thought is Kyle Henderson, Wes's son, has really been becoming the face of it. And also, Wes Henderson is one of those entrepreneurs is that, once he kind of gets settled, he starts getting fidgety. He wants to do something else. That man has to do like 30 things. And I respect that. I'm a lot like that.
I mean, did you look at the end of his sort of Instagram thing where he said kind of moving on to the next thing? It wasn't kind of like, this is it for me.
Yeah.
He left it very open.
Yeah. He's not, he's still going to be in the business somewhere. And if once his non-compete's up, I'm sure he'll be either snatched up or have a mess of investors in the wings ready to start something, because he's still young as business goes. And I just think that there are brands there are brands that have fallen off once the founder left. Kentucky Owl is a really good example. When Dixon Dedman left, I mean, I can't tell you what Kentucky Owl has done in a positive sense. They came out with some diagrams and stuff that they're going to build like the Disney World of bourbon, but I mean, they've got some new leadership, and that's great talent. But when Dixon left, that kind of that popped the balloon of that brand. So there's a lot more equity in Angel's Envy than that. But I just think that it's really, really dependent upon the situation from a business perspective, more than anything when it comes to the face of a brand leaving.
So do you think it could be more? Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, do you think it could be more maybe about the size of the brand that could have the influence? Because you think about what Kentucky Owl was, when it was taken over. What I think he had released 6 batches of a Kentucky Owl when he was acquired, like very, very nominal in the sense of what a bourbon release should probably be. It wasn't very big. Not to try and lay down or like say it's not big or not great or anything. It really is. But you look at that versus what Angel's Envy did when they were acquired by Bacardi, completely 2 different levels on the spectrum of where your national footprint is and everything like that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And when Stoli acquired Kentucky Owl, Dixon came over in the deal, and they just they were not an American whiskey company, and it showed. And Dixon hung on and did his thing, and he left for his own reasons. But it was obvious to me that it was not a good fit. And when he left, the soul of the brand left. And so, like, they're putting stuff up on the shelf, and they don't have anyone to out there promote it and talk about it. I mean, it's just they don't have that, and that hurts it. And that's why you see like the Wise Man sitting on shelves. Is the whiskey good? I mean, it's meh, but
thanks for letting us know how you really feel.
That one's not going to go up to $900 a bottle after this.
Cecil, I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier. What were you about to bring up?
No, I just kind of piggyback on everything that everyone said. I think to appeal to whiskey geeks, you have to have that person connected to a brand, and if you want that to live on forever, you create a brand around them. Like Fred was talking about brands that have been, that still live on, like Booker's. Even at Buffalo Trace, they have Elmer T. Lee or Blanton's, and so if you want that person to be part of, your brand forever, it's like go ahead and create, in which the Russells have done. But to average consumers, nobody knows who the Russells are. No offense, they don't know who Fred No is or Booker No. They may know Booker No, but that just an average drinker is just not going to care about that. And so that's, as a company, you can't make it bigger. You can't make an individual bigger than the brand, and because it's just so much bigger. And Four Roses has done that. They have one release, the Al Young edition, but everything hasn't been around a person. It's been more, well, they did have a Brent Elliott when he came out, but most of them are, the Four Roses, and that's, their thing. So, I think if you want to connect to people, having a person attached to it, and I think you can always be grooming and having somebody transition it over. And I don't know that it necessarily has to be in the family. If that brand stays, say like Russell's, for instance, say, for whatever reason, Bruce is like, you know what, I'm going to move on, going to do my own thing. But somebody else comes in, that there's so much history, with the Russell. I think it could continue to live on without them. But as long as the whiskey's good,
Yeah, you make a good point there. And I also want to give a shout out to DJ and Rarebird, who won on the chat, and as well as Matt Cusick. They're kind of going back and forth talking about Maker's Mark and the Samuels. And is the Samuels the face of the Maker's Mark brand? Or, you've got Denny Potter there as well. And do these people matter? Like if they weren't there? I think there is a good contention and good argument to be able to made there. There's one thing I also want to touch on when we talk about these large brands versus small brands, and essentially what it means to have equity in a company and what does it mean for you to be there. So if we look at something like Angel's Envy, where it was Wes and he built this thing and he sold it to Bacardi, he might still have a little bit of equity in Angel's Envy after selling it, or he's cashed out and everything like that. And so he's kind of ready to move on. I think it's a little bit different situation. Like, I understand we have this fascination with the Russells and the brand of Wild Turkey and having these names connected to it. But let's not get it twisted that this is a salary job for most people. Like, they don't have equity in the company. Like, they're not there to make the company happy. They're there to get a paycheck. And they could leave tomorrow. Like, Eddie could leave tomorrow and just go start his own consulting gig. It's either that he doesn't want to disappoint his dad, or he's getting paid too much and there's no point for him to leave. And so there is this idea that if you want to kind of keep this going, you might want to have some sort of equity in the company that wants to keep you there. And I think that's the thing that might be getting lost. I understand, your family, your brand, you're knowing about it, but maybe that's just leverage when it comes to negotiations on what your salary is going to be, because it's not like you own a percentage of it at the end of the day.
You know what's interesting? It's something that I learned with the Bullet debacle with Tom and Hollis Bullet, was that he was getting paid a royalty for the use of his name. So there are avenues of that these people in these positions get for beyond like a beyond equity. Now Tom Bullitt negotiated that. He's a very intelligent tax attorney.
And you got to remember, he was early in the acquisition stage of any of these brands too. So he might have had leverage before anybody else. So
that's true. So what's interesting is, like, there's a lot of ways. I can't imagine, the Russells not getting something for having their name on the bottle. Like, I mean, if
they didn't negotiate that was a mistake.
Yeah. I mean,
their attorneys needs to be fired.
That would be my first thing of business, firing that attorney. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to get here. And a very interesting point is Denny Potter. Denny Potter has moved around multiple facilities. He was at Makers at first, and he was at Crucian Rum, and then Heaven Hill, and then Makers again. And Makers is really their face is the red dripping wax. The Samuels come up with stories from time to time, but their face is the wax. That's their brand. And they have went through, in my career, they've been through 5 distillers, in 16 years. So that's the master distiller there almost doesn't even matter for Maker's Mark.
And I think going back to, just reminding folks that Kenny said that this is a job. Unless you have equity, this is a job, right? And I think another recent example is Marianne Eves. So, Brown-Forman and Woodford really decided to make her the face, or really start promoting her, and a better opportunity came up at Castle and Key, and then she moved on from that, and she's doing her own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I think people get so caught up with, oh, well, they really need to carry this on or need to be loyal. It's just like everyone on this roundtable and everyone out there. It's a job. Like, at the end of the day, this is what you're doing to make a living and put food on the table. So when better opportunities afford themselves, most people will take them. End of story.
Good point.
Good point. Very wholesome. Very good way to kind of end that. But I do want to bring up one last topic before we end this, and that's kind of a fun one here. So over the past pandemic that is still kind of tailing its way through here, every single distillery across Kentucky has been pumping money and making their visitor experience bigger and better than ever. So we've talked about in the roundtable before, and it might have been 60 roundtables ago when we probably talked about it, but I kind of want to bring this up again because there has been a huge surge of these updates in the distilleries. Now I want to ask you all, what is your top place that you would recommend visitors to go to if they're going to start visiting the Bourbon Trail?
What are you looking for? Food, distillery?
Anything.
I was gonna say, it's like
literally
they all
what's
have
your favorite
something.
kid? Yeah, they
'Cause,
all have something different.
Yeah.
So they're all very different. I'll just pick one and I'll kick it off. And I recommend this to friends all the time. If you're only going to be able to do one distillery visit, it's not even on the official Bourbon Trail, go to Buffalo Trace. Right. I think what they've done with just their visitor experience is fantastic. Their visitor center is huge now after the renovation. And it's a free tour on top of that, right? Unless you pay for one of their more advanced ones. It's just a great facility, and they run it really well. And I think you get a little bit of that little bit of everything in there. Really good tour, really good experience. You get to taste stuff. It's nicely done, and that's always my number one go-to. I mean, there's a long list behind that, but when there's just one, it's Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
So to point out, and Brian Hara would be very disappointed in us if I didn't point this out.
Make sure you put the asterisk here. Yeah.
So, Jordan, great recommendation for a distillery visit. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail is a registered trademark of the Kentucky Distillers Association. In 2009, Buffalo Trace and the KDA sued each other over Buffalo Trace leaving the KDA and using the Bourbon Trail in their marketing.
Well,
that's all water under the bridge.
That's why I said they're not on the official Bourbon Trail.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Put that.
But it's like, seriously, that is like, I used to cover that and write about it all the time, and I was like beating a dead horse. I don't like talking about that anymore. But anyway, so I love going outside of the norms, and I like to get people out to Western Kentucky to MB Rollin'. It's a very, 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 very different experience, and you get to see an old Amish farm that was a former dairy farm, and the owners will be there and they'll show you around. I like going to the smaller places a lot. The bigger ones, if I'm having to choose a bigger distillery, it's probably Maker's Mark, just because it's so damn beautiful.
It is. Did they do any renovations or anything like that in the past few years? I haven't heard of much that they've been dumping into it. I'm sure they have. Everybody has, but
Makers?
Yeah,
Makers
has. Yeah.
Yeah, they just did another one. They just did another one that was like they got some kind of special certification for the environment, So I think they'll be announcing that soon.
The B Corp, they've already announced that one.
They do it, yeah.
They've had that, yeah.
So my answer is going to be a little more long-winded, but I think you need to do a little bit of both. So I love Fred's suggestion on MB Rollin'. They're doing fantastic stuff. Jordan's is great. Hit Buffalo Trace and then bounce over to maybe Castle and Key. So you see a little bit of both sides of you walk through Buffalo Trace and it's a manufacturing plant of alcohol. It's an impressive situation. They do have a little bit of everything. They've got history, they've got tastings, they've got all that. But then it's just cool to go and see it on a smaller scale. Other big suggestion is just make a Bardstown day, because I think you can do all of that there. I'm not sure I've been to Kentucky in the last couple of years without hitting Bardstown Bourbon Company, just because it's like, hey, do you just want to stop for lunch? Do you want to stop and do a tour? Do you want to do a tasting? Then you can bounce to Willett, Heaven Hill, and you kind of get a little bit of everything. So that's my small rambling of like, you got to get a little bit of everything, right? You want to see how the big guys do it. You want to see how the small guys do it. And I kind of compare it to wine a little bit, but yeah.
I like how I said choose one, and you're like, well, I'll choose 50, and we'll start there.
I like how you said one. I'm going to take that suggestion and improve upon it. So thank you, Kenny.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing.
That's it.
I mean,
yeah.
Food
before you start there, I do want to just recommend and just echo Blake's sentiment. I'm a big fan of Castle and Key. I understand that's probably one thing that's probably not on a lot of people's radar if you are just the average person that you're, hey, let's go to Kentucky and go do a distillery tour. But for the whiskey geek community and people who really want to walk through history and you really want to see the castle and see what E.H. Taylor built, it's a fascinating sort of thing to just go and be there, stand in the grounds and kind of just look around and like just kind of take back a few decades and kind of just really drink it all in. It's definitely one of those things that if you've never done it before, for a true whiskey geek, you should definitely go check it out.
And for the Revolutionary War history buffs, there's a soldier buried right across the street, and it's well kept. It's an interesting site to visit as well.
And it's right down the street from Woodford, so you can kill two birds with one stone too.
Mm-hmm.
You're in quintessential horse country right there. Quintessential Kentucky, everything.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, but yeah, just because I like food and cocktails, Willett is gonna be. You gotta, if you haven't been there, it's the best food in the state to me. And then as far as a distiller experience, either Bardstown Bourbon Company or Castle and Key are my two favorites right now, because Castle and Key is a beautiful integration of history and modern they did a beautiful job of designing that. It's a walk through history, but it's also modernized, and the grounds are just. I love gardens. I love plants, and it's just like a day. You can spend a day there just walking around. Yeah, and Barson Bourbon Company, they're so hospitable, and their food's great. The cocktails are good. Those would be my top 3 right now. I know you said 1, but I condensed it down from Blake's.
It's all right. Everybody does a little something. All right, I'll do a little something as well, and I guess I'll choose 2 because everybody else chose 2, so might as well let me choose 2. So first, I think is one that has. It's not because it's a pre-pandemic thing or anything like that. It came out, it was before then, but it was definitely before we had this conversation years ago, and it's just now it's available, and we always encourage people to do it. So if you're staying in Louisville, is to definitely go and do Old Forester. It is definitely one of the most compact and full featured tours that you're going to experience. I don't know where else you're going to be able to see everything from distillation to bottling to coopering all in like 5,000 square feet. Like, I don't know how they cram it all in there. It's probably bigger than 5,000, but I'm just saying there's a lot to experience there. And it's definitely one of those cool things that if you're staying downtown, that's definitely one of the things that I would say you definitely go hit. One of the greatest things that I like on the food side that really surprised me was the new restaurant at Jim Beam. So if you had an opportunity to go and check that out, I would definitely put that towards the top of the list. I think I think the bad thing about Jim Beam is because it's like situated in the middle of, gosh, it's like you're coming off 64 and you hit Jim Beam, and then it's like you got to go another 35 minutes or so to get to Bardstown. So it's kind of like this little like stop in the middle of the road. So you got to try to really plan it properly, especially if you're going to eat and try to figure out what you're going to do before or afterwards. But I was really impressed with the food as well as the view. One of the top 10, maybe top 10, probably top 2 views that you're going to see in Bourbon Country is being able to go on their patio and just look out across the hills and the warehouses and see all that. The other great view that you're going to see is, of course, if you're selecting a barrel at Wild Turkey, and you kind of get to go down there at the bottom of the hill and kind of look over the bridge and see all that sort of stuff too. So there's definitely a few there that are top of my list. But
all
there's
really
about
good.
10 more you can name. So
yeah, I know.
All really good choice, and I think it's important to remind folks, especially if you've been to Kentucky before, but it's been a few years, especially if it's been since pandemic. Bourbon's super hot, and you actually now need to make reservations for tours. I think a lot of folks who used to go in the past and just show up and be like, "Oh, I can do a tour. Okay, no problem." You got to make that, a few weeks in advance, depending on where you want to go, when you want to go. So keep that in mind if you're going. Definitely go explore all these recommendations, but make sure you're able to get in.
And none of us can no longer get you access to those tours.
No, all you got to do is DM Kenny, and he'll set the whole thing up.
Please don't.
I can't tell you. People are like, "Hey, can you come get me on a tour?" I'm like, I cannot. No.
We're not pulling those strings for you. I promise. We don't know the tour guides. Okay. No, I think that's one of those things that we definitely get hit up a lot about. Hey, I'm just coming to town. You think you can hook me up? I'm like, no, I don't know anybody that can get you on a tour. Like, that's not going to happen. And Jordan, you kind of said echo that comment too about making sure that you book a tour online. Yes, it is definitely imperative. And I don't think it's not a staffing issue anymore. It's literally and it's not even a COVID thing where they try to separate people. It's literally, that's how popular these things are, that you just can't show up anymore. You have to book it well in advance if you want to sort of make that happen.
I mean, Buffalo Trace had over 350,000 people last year in 2021. They're hitting over 2,000 people a day at some points. I mean, it's bonkers. You should wait for the tour secondary market to just really explode before you know it.
There be NFTs for those.
Oh, I was going to say NFTs.
I actually did go to Buffalo Trace last weekend to go and select a barrel, and they have definitely changed their game. Like, you go in and you have to have a wristband to get into the gift shop and walk around, and they're now also transforming one of the original buildings that's in the parking lot into the first stop of the guest experience, and that's where you get your first wristband before you can go to anywhere else. Like, it's going to be a new Disneyland experience there soon.
I was just disappointed Buffalo Trace, they didn't put like a cocktail lounge or anything there to hang out.
That's true.
I didn't understand that move. Or non-move.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
It would have. It would have. But let's go ahead. We'll wrap it up as another great bourbon community roundtable. We hit on a lot of good topics. But of course, before we always end it, I want to let our guests here, the regulars, besides Blake, to give an outro.
His battery died.
I say that because it could have been perfect timing. As we were ending, he literally just disappeared off the stream. So Blake from Sealbox, we had a good time with you. But Jordan, I'll let you go.
Sure. Jordan from Breaking Bourbon. Find us for all of your reviews and bourbon needs.
Now he comes back. There you go, Blake. We'll let you go ahead and do an outro now. I did one for you, but we'll let you do an official.
Internet. It was just a bad click. But I'm Blake from Bourbon and Sealbox.
You got some pop-ups we need to know about?
No, I was trying to look up something really quick. I'll save for after the show. But yeah, so thank you all for having me. It's always fun. Is this the first? No, this is our second one in 2022. We did have one in January, didn't we? So always good to be back. Always fun. So
it is February.
It is February. So appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. And this is, again, it's a fun one. We'll be back here again in another month, bringing on a new set of topics. But make sure you go follow these guys, follow Bourbon Pursuit wherever you get your socials. Of course, follow our buddy Fred Minnick, and make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Share it with a friend, write a review, tell everybody hello when you see them and talk bourbon. Say, hey, you gotta check out these guys on Bourbon Pursuit. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Vodka sucks.
Toodles.
All right.
I love you, Blake.
Now
Oh, your timing's
never
perfect.
changed.
Your timing is
Funny.
perfect.
So how was your how was the tour guide Fred at Buffalo Trace when you were there?
Oh, he was great. I mean,
He
he called you, didn't he? He was telling me about it.
He buys from Sealbox, and he was like, I was like, man, I wish I would have known. I was literally just there last week. And then he messaged me. He's like, man, I'm so excited. Like, gonna be your guide for the pick. I'm like, I'm not doing a pick. Are you sure it's not somebody else? And he's like, it says Sealbox DC on it. I'm like, well, I don't know who's doing that, but so what y'all pick? But he seems like a super nice guy. So
He's awesome.
Yeah,
he's
we
good
did a
dude.
stag pick.
oh,
Stag Junior.
all right. Well,
Actually,
what
No, there's no more
they dropped the
junior.
junior,
It's
so
just
it's just
stag.
stag now.
Oh, that's right.
But I did. They did. By the way, it's knowledge now, and I guess when I was there, it was Bo Beckman's last day was on Friday, and so he had. So he's left the company recently, so I have no idea
where's
what's
he
up.
going?
I don't
I
know.
liked Bo.
So we'll see what
Yeah, I always
happens
like
there.
Bo too.
No, he's
Um,
great. But also back to what I was saying is, Ryan had called it Stag Junior. So here's the thing that Susanna told me, and this is kind of funny, is that they have tons of glass that say Stag Junior on them, but they don't want to use them. And now they're in this huge waiting period of getting glass because they just want it to say Stag on it. And so
that's
it's
right.
like they're just in this huge. I mean, when we were there in Warehouse H, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many single barrel selections are just sitting there in the ricks because they can't bottle anything right now because they don't have any glass.
Tell them
Wow.
I'll buy all the glass from them for a small price of not getting sued for putting the next Sealbox release. I'll just put a sticker that says Sealbox over front. Nobody will
Yeah.
ever know.
Uh-huh.
Oh man.
Oh, man.
That's funny. So what was the tasting process like? Was it pretty good, or did you find something good?
I mean, it's just like
I
a
heard-
barrel selection, but
They give you more than one cup now.
From what I heard,
Plastic cups.
from
There's
what
no-
I
they
heard,
actually have
half of
glass
those
cups
bottles
now.
got lost. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Now
half
they
the
have,
bottles got lost on the train.
It wasn't my barrel, by the way. So I was just invited to be a part of it. But
I
that
believe
was-
it's running through DC though.
it is. It's running through you. And this was somebody who got lucky during the lottery for the single barrel
Nice.
select. So that's what it was.
Stag box chat heels.
That's funny.
It's coming soon.
Yeah. I like it.
All right, I'm out. I've
I'm
got
tired
a
too.
early morning in Nashville. If anybody's in Nashville tomorrow night, shoot me a message on
Typical
email,
Blake style.
Instagram.
What's in
Um,
Nashville? You selecting some barrels with those guys or something?
Yep. Nashville Barrel Company, meeting a few other people.
Nice.
Just a quick in and out. Yeah.
Man, the life of a seal box corner right now. I'm
Yeah,
jealous.
It's extremely glamorous when you get to show up to the airport at 6:30 in the morning to be back at the airport at 9 the next morning. Trust me. There's a lot of bourbon in between,
Done that.
thankfully, but
Mm.
yeah, quick up and
Mm.
back. But
You'll be fine. You're a champ. I know you can
Well,
handle it.
it's funny. The last time I was up there, the guys who came with me, one of them he runs a bar program down here, and he's like, "Man, I need like a week to recover." I'm like, what were you expecting? You thought we were just gonna come and like have tea in the morning? And come on, man, you got to be built for this.
Get your shit together. It's a
We
big,
got
it's a
our
big day.
stamina, you know.
Yeah, it's
Gotta have
a
the stamina.
scary thing at points where I'm like, okay, yeah,
Uh-huh.
we should keep going.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yep.
Cool, man. All right, we'll drop
All
off.
right, enjoyed
Not a
it.
problem. Yeah, we
Yep.
can all
Hey,
probably,
guys.
yeah, we can all drop off. Thank you everybody else for sticking around. Cheers,
Woo.
all 150 of you at one point. So that was
Oh,
always
solid.
awesome to see.
Rock and roll.
Nice.
That was
Yeah.
nice.
We'll see y'all next month.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Sounds good.
everybody.
Cheers,
Bye.
Later.
Bye.